In the gleaming corridors of Meridian Financial Tower, where billion-dollar decisions shape the fate of countless lives, a simple folded paper star would become the bridge between despair and hope. Timothy Drew had spent 12 years keeping these pristine floors spotless, invisible to the executives who rushed past him each night, when his small act of kindness for his 8-year-old daughter would save the life of Anna Scott, the most powerful woman in the building. What happened next shocked everyone who thought they knew the limits of human compassion. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The city of Northbridge never slept, and neither did its towering financial district. At 2:47 a.m. on that fateful Tuesday in November, the 43rd floor of Meridian Financial Tower glowed like a lighthouse against the darkness, its windows revealing the silhouette of a woman who had built an empire but lost herself in the process. Most of the building's occupants had long since retreated to their suburban homes, leaving behind only the quiet army of maintenance workers who transformed these corporate temples from chaos back to perfection. Timothy Drew pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway, the familiar squeak of its wheels providing a rhythmic soundtrack to his solitary work. At 34, he moved with the efficient grace of someone who had turned invisible labor into an art form. His navy blue uniform was pressed to perfection, a habit inherited from his late father, who had taught him that dignity lived not in the job title, but in the pride you brought to your work. The nameplate on his chest simply read T. Drew, though most of the executives racing past him each day wouldn't have noticed if it said Invisible Man. His cart carried the usual supplies: industrial cleaners, microfiber cloths, and vacuum attachments that could reach every corner of these sprawling office spaces. But tonight, tucked carefully beside his thermos of coffee, sat something that didn't belong in any maintenance manual: a small paper star, folded from bright yellow construction paper, its 5 points slightly uneven from the eager hands that had created it. Little Emma had pressed it into his palm that morning, her gap-toothed smile radiant as she explained its purpose. "Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez says when you make a wish on a star and give it to someone who needs hope, the wish comes true twice," the 8-year-old had announced with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "Once for them and once for you." Timothy had accepted the star with the solemn reverence befitting such a precious gift, promising to find someone who needed it. Now, as he made his way through the executive floor, he wondered if such a person even existed in this realm of corner offices and six-figure bonuses. These people seemed to have everything: power, wealth, respect. What could a paper star possibly offer them? The answer waited behind the frosted glass doors of the corner office, though Timothy couldn't have known it as he approached with his usual quiet efficiency. Through the transparent walls, he could see the silhouette of Anna Scott, Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Financial, one of the most influential women in corporate America. At 41, she commanded a financial empire worth over $3 billion, her face gracing magazine covers and business conference stages across the globe. Forbes had named her one of the most powerful people under 50. Fortune had called her a visionary. The Wall Street Journal had dubbed her the Ice Queen of Finance for her legendary composure under pressure. But tonight, that legendary composure had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Anna sat motionless at her mahogany desk, the city lights casting shadows across her face as she stared at the bottle of pills in her perfectly manicured hands. The prescription label bore her name, but the contents far exceeded any medical recommendation. 30 tablets, more than enough to quiet the relentless storm that had been raging in her mind for months. The hostile takeover attempt. Anna opened the pill bottle with steady hands, the small white tablets spilling across her desk like snow. She had always been methodical, even in despair. The irony wasn't lost on her that the same attention to detail that had built her empire would now facilitate its end. She reached for the crystal water glass, a gift from her daughter 3 Christmases ago, back when they still spoke regularly, and filled it from the bottle she kept on her credenza. Outside her office, Timothy completed his usual routine in the adjacent conference room, carefully wiping down the massive table where tomorrow's crucial decisions would be made. He had overheard enough conversations over the years to understand the gravity of the work conducted in these rooms, though he suspected few of the executives truly appreciated the weight of their influence on ordinary lives like his own. As he gathered his supplies to move to the next office, Emma's paper star caught the light from the hallway, its cheerful yellow color a stark contrast to the sterile corporate environment. The timing of what happened next would later seem like divine intervention to some, mere coincidence to others. But for Timothy Drew, it was simply the moment when a father's love for his daughter collided with a stranger's desperate need for hope, creating a connection that would transform two lives in ways neither could have imagined. As Timothy approached Anna Scott's office, he had no idea that he was about to become the most important person in the most powerful woman's world, armed with nothing more than a child's handmade star and the gentle wisdom of someone who understood that sometimes the smallest gestures cast the longest shadows. The stage was set for a miracle wrapped in yellow paper. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Timothy Drew's day began at 4:30 a.m. in the cramped but immaculate two-bedroom apartment he shared with his daughter Emma in the working-class neighborhood of Riverside Gardens. While most of Northbridge still slumbered in the pre-dawn darkness, Timothy would quietly slip from his bed, careful not to wake the 8-year-old sleeping peacefully in the room next door, surrounded by the constellation of paper stars they had folded together during their evening ritual. The morning routine had been perfected over 3 years of single parenthood, each movement calculated to maximize their precious time together while maintaining the standards his father had instilled in him decades earlier. In the small bathroom they shared, Timothy would methodically shave and prepare for his shift, the fluorescent light casting familiar shadows across the face that bore the gentle lines of a man who had learned to carry responsibility with grace. The medicine cabinet mirror reflected back not just his own image, but the small photograph tucked into its corner, Emma on her first day of 2nd grade, gap-toothed grin radiating the kind of pure joy that made every sacrifice worthwhile. His father, Robert Drew, had worked the night shift at Northbridge General Hospital for 35 years, returning home each morning as Timothy prepared for school with stories about the doctors and nurses who barely acknowledged his presence, yet whose work was made possible by his invisible dedication. "Son," he would say, adjusting Timothy's school uniform with hands that smelled faintly of industrial disinfectant, "the measure of a man isn't found in how others see him, but in how he sees himself when no one's watching. Pride lives in the doing, not the title." Those words had become Timothy's anchor through the storm of his wife's death 3 years earlier, when a drunk driver had stolen Rebecca from them on a rainy Thursday evening, leaving him to navigate the treacherous waters of single parenthood while maintaining his composure for Emma's sake. The grief counselor had recommended support groups, but Timothy found his solace in work, in the meditative rhythm of restoring order from chaos, in the satisfaction of a job completed with excellence regardless of recognition. The walls of their modest apartment told the story of a life built on love rather than luxury. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator in layers, each piece carefully preserved and celebrated. Her honor roll certificates from Riverside Elementary hung in neat rows above the second-hand couch they had painted sunshine yellow together last summer. Timothy's own achievements were displayed with equal pride. His GED diploma, earned through night classes while Rebecca was pregnant, his custodial management certificate from Northbridge Community College, and the business administration courses he had completed through online programs during Emma's afternoon naps. Between the kitchen and living room, a small bookshelf housed an eclectic collection that reflected their shared love of learning. Dr. Seuss volumes sat beside Timothy's textbooks on facility management and small business operations. Emma's library books about astronomy and marine biology, her current fascinations, shared space with Timothy's well-worn copies of leadership and communication guides. Most treasured was the leather-bound journal where Emma recorded her daily wishes before folding them into paper stars,
a tradition that had begun as a way to process her grief, but had evolved into something magical. "Daddy," she had explained one evening, her small fingers working with surprising dexterity to create perfect folds. "Mrs. Rodriguez says that when you put your wishes into stars, they float up to heaven where Mommy can see them and maybe help them come true." Timothy had nodded solemnly, helping her string the completed stars from her bedroom ceiling, creating a galaxy of hope above her bed.
The morning commute from Riverside Gardens to the financial district required 2 bus transfers and 45 minutes of travel time, but Timothy treasured these quiet moments watching the city transform from residential neighborhoods to commercial districts. He would study the faces of his fellow commuters, nurses heading home from night shifts, construction workers beginning their days, office cleaners like himself who formed the invisible army keeping the city's infrastructure functioning. These were his people, and he carried their dignity with him into the gleaming towers where their work was essential but rarely acknowledged. At Meridian Financial Tower, Timothy's reputation among the maintenance staff was legendary. Carlos Martinez, the day shift supervisor, often joked that Timothy possessed some kind of mystical understanding of the building's needs. "That man can predict a broken elevator 3 days before it happens," Carlos would tell new hires. "He notices things the rest of us miss: loose ceiling tiles, flickering lights, worn carpet that's about to become a safety hazard. It's like the building talks to him." What Carlos didn't realize was that Timothy's apparent supernatural abilities stemmed from genuine care and methodical observation. He had spent years studying the building's rhythms, learning which executives arrived early and needed their offices prepared first, which departments generated the most foot traffic and required additional attention, and which areas were prone to specific maintenance issues based on their location and usage patterns. His cleaning cart contained not just supplies, but also a small notebook where he recorded observations and recommendations. Suggestions that, while rarely credited to him, had saved the building management company thousands of dollars in preventative maintenance. Timothy's locker in the basement maintenance area was a study in organization and efficiency. His spare uniform hung pressed and ready, his work boots polished to a shine that would have made his father proud. Taped to the inside of the locker door was a photo of Emma receiving a certificate for perfect attendance, and beside it, a handwritten note in her careful second-grade script: "Daddy, you are my hero because you take care of everyone." The relationship Timothy had developed with his colleagues reflected the same quiet leadership he brought to every aspect of his life. Maria Santos, who cleaned the lower floors, often sought his advice about dealing with difficult tenants. Young Jordan Williams, barely 18 and new to the night shift, had found in Timothy a patient mentor who taught him not just the technical aspects of commercial cleaning, but the dignity inherent in honest work. "Why do you always fold hospital corners on the towels in the executive washrooms?" Jordan had asked one evening, watching Timothy's meticulous attention to details that no one would notice. "Because," Timothy had replied, smoothing a wrinkle that existed only in his perfectionist's eye, "excellence isn't about who's watching. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Those executives might never notice a perfectly folded towel, but they'll notice, maybe unconsciously, that this is a place where everything is done right." On weekends, Timothy transformed from invisible night janitor to devoted father and community volunteer. Saturday mornings belonged to Emma. Trips to the Northbridge Science Museum, picnics in Riverside Park, or hours spent at the public library where she would lose herself in books about distant galaxies while he caught up on trade publications and business journals. Their tradition of stopping at Rosie's Diner for chocolate chip pancakes had become a neighborhood legend, with the elderly owner always sliding an extra star-shaped cookie across the counter for Emma with a wink. Sunday afternoons were reserved for coaching youth soccer at the Riverside Community Center, where Timothy's patient encouragement had helped transform a group of shy, underprivileged children into a confident team that celebrated effort over victory. The other parents, mostly single mothers struggling with their own challenges, had begun turning to Timothy for advice that extended far beyond soccer strategy. His ability to listen without judgment and offer practical wisdom had made him an unofficial counselor for families navigating similar struggles.
In quiet moments, usually during his lunch break in the building's emergency stairwell where cell phone reception was reliable, Timothy would call to check on Emma. These conversations, brief but precious, were the highlight of his workday. She would share updates about her day at school, her current art project, or a new fact she had learned about constellations. Before hanging up, she would always ask the same question. "Daddy, did you find someone who needs a star today?" The question had become more than a charming ritual. It represented Timothy's approach to life, the belief that everyone, regardless of their outward circumstances, carried hidden wounds that could be healed by unexpected kindness. He had learned this lesson from his father, reinforced it through his own experiences with loss, and was now passing it to his daughter as the most valuable inheritance he could provide. As Timothy prepared to begin his shift that Tuesday evening, Emma's latest star tucked safely in his cart, he had no way of knowing that tonight would test every lesson his father had taught him about dignity, service, and the quiet power of compassion. Somewhere 43 floors above him, a woman who seemingly had everything was about to discover that sometimes salvation comes in the form of yellow construction paper and a father's love transformed into action. The foundation of his character, built on loss, strengthened by responsibility, and illuminated by a child's unwavering faith in the power of wishes, was about to become the cornerstone of someone else's salvation.
Anna Scott had built her empire on the principle that emotion was the enemy of sound business judgment. At 41, she commanded respect in boardrooms from Manhattan to Tokyo, her reputation forged through 15 years of calculated risks and strategic brilliance that had transformed Meridian Financial from a mid-tier investment firm into a global powerhouse. But tonight, alone in her corner office as the city slept below, the armor of professional success felt as fragile as paper. The mahogany desk that had witnessed countless million-dollar decisions now bore the weight of her most personal crisis. The hostile takeover attempt by Cromwell Industries had been defeated 6 months ago, but victory had come at a cost that no financial statement could quantify. During the public battle for control of her company, every aspect of her private life had been dissected by the media, her marriage crumbling under scrutiny that revealed infidelities and incompatibilities that had festered for years behind the facade of corporate power couple perfection. The divorce proceedings had been merciless, playing out across tabloid headlines that painted her as the ice-cold executive who had sacrificed family for fortune. The truth was more complicated. David had begun his affair with his tennis instructor 2 years earlier, but Anna's devotion to Meridian Financial had created the emotional distance that made betrayal possible. The custody battle for their 15-year-old daughter Charlotte had been the final devastation, with David's legal team successfully arguing that Anna's demanding schedule made her an unfit primary guardian. Charlotte now lived in Santa Barbara with her father and his new wife, their weekly phone calls growing increasingly strained as the teenager struggled to reconcile the loving mother she remembered with the ruthless executive portrayed in the media. Last Sunday's conversation had lasted barely 5 minutes, Charlotte's responses monosyllabic and distant. When Anna had suggested a visit during Christmas break, Charlotte had simply said, "I'll think about it," before ending the call with a perfunctory, "Love you, Mom," that felt more like obligation than affection. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on Anna. She had broken barriers as one of the youngest female CEOs in the financial sector, her Harvard MBA and relentless work ethic opening doors that had remained closed to previous generations of women. Forbes had featured her on their cover with the headline, "The Future of Finance is Female," and she had delivered keynote speeches about work-life balance to audiences of ambitious young women who hung on her every word. But the balance she preached publicly had proven impossible to achieve privately. Her office, a monument to professional achievement, reflected the priorities that had guided her rise to power. The walls displayed framed photographs from groundbreaking ceremonies and award presentations, her handshake deals with heads of state and industry titans captured for posterity. The bookshelf housed first editions of business classics and signed copies of leadership memoirs from CEOs she admired.
But there were precious few personal touches. A small framed photo of Charlotte from 3 years ago, before the transformation from adoring daughter to sullen teenager, and a glass paperweight with "World's Best Mom" etched in childlike script, a Mother's Day gift from simpler times. The view from her office windows encompassed the entire financial district, a reminder of her position at the apex of corporate influence. She could see the offices of competitors and allies, the buildings housing pension funds and investment firms whose decisions affect millions of ordinary workers who would never know her name. The weight of that responsibility had once energized her, but tonight it felt crushing. How many people depend on the decisions she made in this room? How many retirement accounts and college funds rose and fell based on her strategic choices? The thought that her death might create market instability was almost amusing. Even in suicide, she would be reduced to her economic impact. The prescription bottle on her desk had been filled that afternoon, the family physician who had treated the Scott family for years showing no suspicion when Anna had complained of increased anxiety and sleeplessness. The irony that she would end her life with medication prescribed to treat the symptoms of the very despair that consumed her was not lost on someone who had built her career on recognizing patterns and inconsistencies. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from 3 continents. The Tokyo markets were showing unusual volatility, and her input was needed on the currency hedging strategy that could affect Meridian's quarterly results. The London office was awaiting her approval on a merger deal that had been 18 months in the making. From New York, her assistant had forwarded a dozen urgent requests for interviews about the company's expansion into sustainable energy investments, an initiative that Anna had championed as both profitable and morally necessary. But for the first time in her career, Anna felt detached from these pressing demands. The emails blurred together into an endless stream of obligations that no longer seemed to matter. She had spent 15 years building something magnificent, but the cost had been everything that life worth living. Success without someone to share it with was just an elaborate form of loneliness. The corporate world that had elevated her to unprecedented heights had also isolated her from genuine human connection. Her friendships had withered under the pressure of constant travel and late-night work sessions. The social circles she moved in were filled with acquaintances who valued her for her influence and connections rather than her authentic self. Even her romantic relationships before David were strategic alliances more than emotional partnerships, chosen for their compatibility with her professional ambitions rather than their capacity for intimacy.
Anna opened her laptop and began composing what she intended to be her final communication, a resignation letter to the board of directors that would serve as both professional farewell and personal confession. The document grew longer as she attempted to explain her decision, but the words felt inadequate to capture the depth of her despair. How could she articulate the profound loneliness of success? How could she convey the weight of always being the strongest person in every room, when what she really needed was someone strong enough to hold her when the facade finally cracked? The building around her had grown quiet, the last of the late-working executives having departed hours earlier. Only the security guards and maintenance crew remained, invisible workers who kept the corporate machine functioning while the decision-makers slept. Anna had rarely considered these people, viewing them as part of the building's infrastructure rather than individuals with their own stories and struggles. Tonight, in her final hours, she found herself wondering about their lives, their families, their dreams that existed entirely separate from the world of quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. Outside her window, the city sparkled with millions of lights, each one representing someone going about their evening routine, families sharing dinner, children being tucked into bed, couples finding comfort in each other's presence. The normal rhythm of human connection that had somehow eluded her despite all her achievements. She had conquered the business world but failed at the fundamental challenge of simply being happy. As Anna prepared to take the final step, she felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. The endless pressure of maintaining her reputation, of exceeding ever higher expectations, of carrying the weight of so many people's financial futures, it would all end in a few moments. Her legacy would be complicated, but at least it would be complete. Meridian Financial would survive her departure. Capable executives would step in to continue the work she had begun. Perhaps her death would even serve as a cautionary tale about the true cost of ambition, helping future generations of women avoid the trap of sacrificing everything personal for professional advancement. The pills felt smooth in her palm as she prepared to take them. 30 small white tablets that represented escape from a pain that had become unbearable. In the distance, she could hear the soft sounds of the maintenance crew beginning their nightly routine, their quiet efficiency a stark contrast to the drama of her own final moments. It seemed fitting somehow that her last act would be witnessed only by the building itself, the monument to her success becoming the tomb of her despair. Anna raised the glass of water to her lips, ready to wash away not just the pills, but the overwhelming burden of being Anna Scott, CEO, public figure, failed mother, and profoundly lonely woman who had lost herself somewhere between Harvard Business School and the corner office that had become her prison. The soft squeak of Timothy's cleaning cart echoed through the empty corridors of the 43rd floor as he made his methodical way toward the executive offices. The sound had become so familiar over his 12 years at Meridian Financial that he barely noticed it anymore. But tonight, it seemed to carry an unusual weight, as if the building itself was holding its breath. His routine had been perfected through thousands of repetitions. Conference rooms first, then individual offices, finishing with the corner suite that housed the CEO's domain. Emma's paper star lay nestled between his cleaning supplies and thermos, its bright yellow color a cheerful anomaly among the industrial bottles and microfiber cloths. Throughout his shift, Timothy had found his eyes drawn to it repeatedly, remembering his daughter's earnest instructions about finding someone who needed hope. The executive floor seemed an unlikely place to find such a person. These offices belonged to individuals who command respect, wield influence, and lived lives that appeared blessed with every advantage society could offer. As Timothy approached the corner office, he noticed something unusual. The lights were still on, casting a warm glow through the frosted glass that bore Anna Scott's name and title in elegant lettering. In his years of cleaning this floor, he had rarely encountered executives working past midnight and never on a Tuesday when no major deadlines loomed. His natural curiosity, the same quality that made him notice loose ceiling tiles and flickering fluorescent bulbs before they became problems, drew his attention to this deviation from the normal pattern. Through the transparent sections of the office walls, Timothy could see a figure sitting motionless at the large desk, silhouetted against the city lights beyond. Something about the scene struck him as wrong, though he couldn't immediately identify why. The person, clearly Miss Scott, based on the office location, appeared to be completely still, not engaged in the typical activities of late-night work. No papers rustled, no keyboard clicked, no phone conversations filled the urgent cadence of corporate decision-making. Timothy paused his cart outside the office, uncertain whether to proceed with his normal cleaning routine or return later to avoid disturbing whatever important work required such late-night concentration. Company policy was clear about interrupting executives during business activities, but his maintenance schedule also required completion of all assigned areas before his shift ended. As he debated his options, a sound reached his ears that made the decision for him. A soft, barely audible sob that spoke of profound human pain. The sound cut through Timothy's professional detachment like a knife through silk. He had heard similar expressions of grief during the darkest days following Rebecca's death, when Emma would cry herself to sleep despite his best efforts to comfort her. The raw emotion transcended social boundaries and job titles, reducing the most powerful person in the building to simply another human being in distress. Without conscious thought, Timothy found himself approaching the office door, his hand raised to knock gently on the frame. Company protocol screamed warnings in his mind. Maintenance staff did not initiate contact with executives, especially not the CEO, and certainly not during personal moments of vulnerability. But a stronger voice, one that sounded remarkably like his father's wisdom about doing what was right regardless of consequences, overrode his professional caution. "Ma'am?"
Timothy's voice was gentle but clear enough to penetrate the office's soundproofing. "Is everything all right in there?" The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence so complete that Timothy wondered if he had imagined the sounds entirely. For a long moment, nothing happened, and he began to question his decision to breach the invisible barrier that separated his world from hers. Then he heard movement, the scrape of a chair being pushed back, footsteps across hardwood flooring, the rustle of papers being hastily gathered. When Anna Scott appeared at her office door, Timothy was struck by the transformation that crisis had wrought in her appearance. The composed executive whose photograph graced magazine covers and whose confident presence commanded boardrooms had been replaced by a woman whose carefully constructed facade had crumbled. Her usually immaculate hair hung loose around her shoulders, her designer suit was wrinkled from hours of sitting in the same position, and her eyes carried the red-rimmed evidence of tears that no amount of professional training could disguise. "I'm sorry," Anna said, her voice hoarse with emotion as she attempted to reassemble her executive persona. "I didn't realize anyone was still in the building. I was just working late on some quarterly projections. You can come back later to clean." But Timothy's years of caring for Emma had taught him to recognize the difference between what people said and what they meant, especially when pain was involved. The woman before him was attempting to perform normalcy while clearly struggling with something far more serious than quarterly reports. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, and her breathing carried the shallow, controlled quality of someone fighting to maintain composure. "Ma'am, with respect," Timothy said softly, setting down the cleaning supplies he had been carrying. "I've been working in this building for 12 years, and I've never seen anyone working on quarterly projections with—" he paused, choosing his words carefully, "with tears." The directness of his observation seemed to surprise Anna, as if no one had spoken to her with such unguarded honesty in years. For a moment, her carefully maintained mask slipped entirely, revealing the depth of desperation that had driven her to this late-night crisis. She looked at Timothy, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in all the years he had cleaned her office, seeing not just the invisible maintenance worker, but a fellow human being offering genuine concern. "I'm sorry," she repeated, though this time the apology seemed directed more at herself than at him. "You're right. I'm not working on anything. I was just—" The words trailed off as she struggled to find language for feelings that had no place in her professional vocabulary. Timothy noticed the prescription bottle on her desk, its white pills scattered across the dark wood surface like fallen snow. His experience with grief and loss had taught him to recognize the signs of someone approaching a precipice, and every instinct honed through years of caring for his daughter screamed that this woman was in immediate danger. The careful way she had arranged the pills, the glass of water positioned nearby, the formal resignation letter visible on her laptop screen, these details painted a picture that made his blood run cold. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the gentle authority he used when Emma needed guidance through difficult emotions, "I think maybe you need someone to talk to right now, not about quarterly reports or business decisions, but about whatever's making you hurt so much that you can't see any other way forward." Anna's composure cracked completely at his words. The careful walls she had built around her pain crumbled under the weight of unexpected compassion from an unlikely source. The irony was not lost on her that in her moment of ultimate crisis, salvation was being offered by someone she had never truly seen, despite his presence in her professional life for over a decade. "You don't understand," she whispered, sinking back into her chair as if the effort of standing had become too much. "I've lost everything that matters. My daughter won't speak to me, my marriage is destroyed, my friends were never really friends at all. I've spent 15 years building something magnificent, but I built it on the ruins of everything I should have valued instead." Timothy stepped further into the office, abandoning all pretense of maintaining appropriate boundaries between their respective social positions. In this moment, titles and hierarchies meant nothing compared to the immediate need to prevent a tragedy that would ripple far beyond the walls of Meridian Financial Tower. "Ma'am, I may not understand your specific pain," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk with the same calm presence he brought to Emma's crisis. "But I understand loss. I understand feeling like the ground has disappeared beneath you and wondering if the fall will ever end. And I understand that sometimes, when everything feels hopeless, we need someone to remind us that dawn always comes, even after the darkest night." As he spoke, Timothy's hand unconsciously moved toward his cleaning supplies, where Emma's bright yellow star waited to fulfill her creator's wishes about bringing hope to someone who needed it most.
The silence that followed Timothy's words stretched between them like a bridge neither was certain they should cross. Anna found herself studying this man who had just shattered every professional boundary she had carefully maintained throughout her career. In 12 years of his cleaning her office, she had never really seen him. Not as a person with his own story, his own wisdom, his own capacity for compassion that apparently extended to executives who had never acknowledged his existence. Timothy remained seated across from her, his posture relaxed but attentive, as if he had all the time in the world to listen to whatever she needed to say. There was something profoundly unsettling yet comforting about his presence. No agenda, no judgment, no attempt to fix her problems with quick solutions or empty platitudes. He simply sat there, offering the rarest gift in her high-powered world, genuine human presence without expectation of anything in return. "I don't even know your name," Anna said finally, the admission carrying more weight than she had intended. It was a confession that revealed how disconnected she had become from the people whose work made her own possible, how thoroughly she had insulated herself within the executive bubble that treated building staff as invisible infrastructure rather than fellow human beings. Timothy remained seated across from her, his posture relaxed but attentive, as if he had all the time in the world to listen to whatever she needed to say. There was something profoundly unsettling yet comforting about his presence. No agenda, no judgment, no attempt to fix her problems with quick solutions or empty platitudes. He simply sat there, offering the rarest gift in her high-powered world, genuine human presence without expectation of anything in return. "I don't even know your name," Anna said finally, the admission carrying more weight than she had intended. It was a confession that revealed how disconnected she had become from the people whose work made her own possible, how thoroughly she had insulated herself within the executive bubble that treated building staff as invisible infrastructure rather than fellow human beings. "Timothy Drew, ma'am," he replied without any trace of resentment for her years of oversight. "I've been cleaning your office since you took over as CEO, watched you build this company into something remarkable, though I don't suppose you ever noticed me noticing." The gentle correction in his tone made Anna wince with recognition of her own blindness. How many other people had she overlooked in her relentless climb to the top? How many opportunities for genuine connection had she missed while focusing exclusively on the next quarterly report, the next acquisition, the next barrier to break in her industry? "I'm sorry," Anna said, and for the first time in years, the apology felt completely authentic. "I've been so focused on running this company that I forgot it's filled with actual people, not just positions on an organizational chart. That's part of what's wrong with me, isn't it? I've become so good at seeing everything as a business problem that I forgot how to see human beings." Timothy leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Ma'am, if I may say so, I think you've been carrying a weight that no one person should have to bear alone. I've watched you through these windows for years, first one in the building, last one to leave, weekends spent in meetings that most folks would skip for their family time. You've been trying to be everything to everyone except yourself." Anna felt tears threatening again, but this time they came not from despair, but from the shock of being truly seen by someone who had no reason to care about her well-being.
When was the last time anyone had looked at her life and recognized the burden she carried rather than simply expecting her to carry more? "My daughter," Anna began, then stopped, unsure how to explain the complexity of losing Charlotte's respect and trust. She used to think I could do anything. When she was little, she would tell her friends that her mommy was the most important person in the whole world. Now she can barely stand to talk to me for 5 minutes. She lives with her father in California, and when I call, I can hear in her voice that she's embarrassed by who I've become." Timothy nodded slowly, his expression reflecting understanding rather than pity. "Children have a way of seeing truth that adults sometimes miss," he said gently. "My daughter, Emma, she's 8. She has this gift for cutting through all the complicated explanations we grown-ups come up with and getting straight to what really matters. Maybe your daughter is seeing something you need to see too, but it doesn't mean she's stopped loving you. It might mean she's waiting for you to find your way back to the person she remembers." "How do you find your way back when you've gone so far that you can't even remember who you used to be?" Anna asked, the question emerging from a place of such vulnerability that she barely recognized her own voice. "I used to have dreams that weren't measured in stock prices and market share. I used to believe that success meant building something that would make the world better, not just more profitable. When did I lose that? When did I become someone who measures everything by its quarterly impact?" Timothy was quiet for a moment, and Anna could see him considering his response with the same careful attention he brought to his work. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of someone who had faced his own moments of profound questioning. "Ma'am, I lost my wife 3 years ago. Car accident, completely unexpected, turned our whole world upside down in an instant. For months afterward, I felt like I'd lost myself along with her. Couldn't figure out how to be Emma's father without being Rebecca's husband. Couldn't see how to move forward when everything I'd planned was suddenly impossible. I kept going through the motions of living, but I felt like I was watching someone else's life." Anna found herself drawn into his story, recognizing parallels to her own sense of disconnection from her authentic self. "How did you find your way back?" "Emma," Timothy said simply. "She needed me to be present, not just physically, but emotionally. I realized that grief had made me so focused on what I'd lost that I was missing what I still had. Started paying attention to the small moments, bedtime stories, paper stars, soccer games where she was more interested in picking flowers than following the ball. Those little things reminded me who I was underneath all the pain."
He paused, reaching into his cart to retrieve something. "She made this for me this morning," he said, holding up the bright yellow paper star. "Told me to find someone who needed hope and give it to them. Said her teacher taught her that wishes work twice, once for the person who receives them and once for the person who gives them away." Anna stared at the simple paper creation, its imperfect folds and cheerful color such a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of her office environment. There was something profoundly moving about the idea that an 8-year-old girl had created this small token of hope with the explicit intention of helping a stranger, never knowing that her gift would find its way to someone contemplating ending their life. "Your daughter sounds wise beyond her years," Anna said softly. "She is," Timothy agreed with obvious pride. "But she learned that wisdom through loss, same as we all do. The difference is, children don't get so caught up in protecting themselves from future pain that they stop being open to present joy. Maybe that's what you're missing, ma'am. Not just your daughter's respect, but your own willingness to be vulnerable enough to receive love when it's offered." Anna felt something shifting inside her, a loosening of the tight control she had maintained over her emotions for so long. For the first time in months, the future seemed like something other than an endless repetition of obligations and disappointments. She wasn't ready to believe in happiness again, but she was beginning to believe in the possibility of hope. "Timothy," she said, using his name deliberately, "why are you doing this?
Why are you sitting here with me instead of calling security or management or someone whose job it actually is to deal with executives having breakdowns?" Timothy smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face into something almost radiant. "Because, ma'am, sometimes the most important work we do isn't in our job description. Sometimes being human means stepping outside the roles we're assigned and just being present for another person who's hurting. My father taught me that the measure of a man isn't in his title or his paycheck, but in his willingness to help when help is needed, regardless of whether anyone will ever know he did it." Anna looked at the paper star in Timothy's hand, then at the scattered pills on her desk, and realized that she was standing at a crossroads that would define not just her own future, but potentially influence countless other lives. The choice was no longer between living and dying, but between continuing to exist in isolation or taking the first frightening step toward reconnecting with her own humanity. The next morning arrived with the mechanical precision that governed Anna Scott's carefully ordered world, but everything felt fundamentally different. She had remained in her office through the night, not working on quarterly projections or strategic initiatives, but engaged in the most honest conversation she had experienced in years. Timothy had stayed with her until dawn, sharing stories about Emma's paper star rituals, his late wife's dreams of opening a small bakery, and the quiet wisdom he had gleaned from years of observing human nature through the invisible lens of night shift maintenance work. By the time the sun painted the city skyline in shades of amber and rose, Anna had made a decision that would have seemed impossible 12 hours earlier. She wanted to understand who Timothy Drew really was beneath the uniform and job title that had rendered him invisible to her for so many years. The pills had been flushed down her private bathroom sink, the resignation letter deleted from her laptop, and the crushing weight of despair replaced by something she barely dared to name: curiosity about the possibility of genuine human connection. Anna's assistant, Jennifer Martinez, arrived at 8:30 as always, her efficient morning routine temporarily disrupted by the unusual sight of her boss already at work, looking simultaneously exhausted and more alert than she had appeared in months. Jennifer had worked for 3 different CEOs during her 15 years at Meridian Financial, and she possessed the invaluable ability to read executive moods and adjust her approach accordingly. This morning, however, Anna Scott presented a puzzle that defied her usual interpretive skills. "Good morning, Miss Scott," Jennifer said carefully, setting the usual arrangement of priority documents and steaming coffee. "I wasn't expecting you in so early. Did the Tokyo markets require overnight attention?" "Actually, Jennifer," Anna replied, her voice carrying an unfamiliar quality that Jennifer couldn't quite identify. "I need you to pull some personnel files for me. Complete employment records, performance evaluations, background information, everything we have on file." Jennifer retrieved her tablet, fingers poised to capture the details of what was presumably a routine human resources inquiry. "Of course, which department should I focus on? Are we conducting a management review for the quarterly assessment?" "I need everything we have on Timothy Drew," Anna said, watching Jennifer's expression for any sign of recognition. "He works night shift maintenance, has been with the company for 12 years. I want to understand his employment history, his qualifications, any feedback we've received about his work performance." Jennifer's tablet remained motionless in her hands as she processed this unexpected request. In 15 years of supporting executive leadership, she had never been asked to research a maintenance worker's background. The request was so unusual that she wondered if she had misheard the name or the department. "I'm sorry, Miss Scott, did you say Timothy Drew from maintenance? Is there a specific issue I should be aware of, a performance problem or safety concern that requires executive attention?" "Quite the opposite," Anna replied, settling back in her chair with the first genuine smile Jennifer had seen from her in months. "I want to understand why we haven't been paying attention to him before now. Call it a comprehensive review of our human resources development opportunities, starting with employees who might have untapped potential." Jennifer nodded, though her confusion was evident. "I'll have the complete file ready within an hour.
Should I also prepare background information on other maintenance staff members, or are we focusing specifically on Mr. Drew? Start with Timothy. But yes, I think a broader review of all our support staff might be illuminating. How well do we really know the people who keep this building functioning? What qualifications do they have beyond their current job requirements? Are there advancement opportunities we've been overlooking? As Jennifer left to compile the requested information, Anna found herself genuinely eager to see the documentary evidence of Timothy's background. Their night-long conversation had revealed hints of depth and capability that seemed to extend far beyond commercial cleaning expertise. But she wanted to understand the full scope of his hidden qualifications. The file that Jennifer delivered an hour later proved to be far more substantial than Anna had anticipated. Timothy Drew's employment record painted a picture of steady excellence that had somehow escaped executive notice for over a decade. His attendance record was flawless, not a single absence or tardiness in 12 years of night shift work. His performance evaluations consistently rated him as exceptional, with building supervisors noting his initiative in identifying maintenance issues before they became costly problems. More intriguing were the educational credentials listed in his original application materials. Timothy had completed his GED while working full-time, followed by a facility management certification from Northbridge Community College. The file also contained records of continuing education courses he had completed at his own expense: business administration, basic accounting, workplace safety management, and even a customer service training program that seemed oddly relevant for someone whose job theoretically involved minimal human interaction. Several commendation letters from building tenants had been filed over the years, though Anna realized she had never seen them despite being CEO during most of the period they covered. A law firm on the 30th floor had written to praise Timothy's discretion and professionalism when he had discovered and reported a significant water leak that could have destroyed irreplaceable legal documents. The accounting firm on the 35th floor had specifically requested that Timothy be assigned to their area after he had identified and resolved a climate control issue that was affecting their computer servers. Most surprising was a letter from Dr. Patricia Williams, a pediatric oncologist who occasionally worked late in the medical offices on the 20th floor. She had written to building management 3 years earlier to describe how Timothy had noticed that she seemed distressed during one of her late-night shifts and had offered to listen while she processed the emotional weight of losing a young patient. His compassionate presence had helped her through a crisis that could have ended her career, and she had wanted management to know that their maintenance staff included someone with genuine counseling instincts. Anna leaned back in her chair, studying the pattern that emerged from these documents. Timothy Drew was not simply an exceptional janitor. He was a natural leader whose talents had been systematically underutilized by an organization that failed to look beyond job descriptions. His ability to identify problems before they became crises, his skill at building relationships across departmental boundaries, and his instinct for supporting colleagues during personal difficulties suggested capabilities that could benefit Meridian Financial in ways that extend far beyond maintenance duties. "Jennifer," Anna called through her intercom, "I need you to schedule a meeting with Human Resources. I want to discuss our policies regarding internal promotion and career development opportunities for support staff." "Certainly, Miss Scott. Should I specify a particular focus for the discussion?" Anna paused, considering how to frame her inquiry without revealing the personal crisis that had prompted her sudden interest in Timothy's background. "Tell them I'm interested in reviewing our talent development pipeline. I want to understand whether we're maximizing the potential of all our employees, not just the ones who start in management track positions." As Jennifer confirmed the appointment, Anna continued reading through Timothy's file, discovering additional evidence of his hidden qualifications. A supervisor's note from 6 years earlier mentioned Timothy's suggestion for reorganizing the building's emergency response procedures, recommendations that had been implemented with measurable improvements in efficiency.
Another document revealed that he had been quietly translating for Spanish-speaking maintenance workers, helping them navigate company policies and safety requirements without any additional compensation or formal recognition. The picture that emerged was of someone who had been functioning as an unofficial leader and mentor within the maintenance department while simultaneously educating himself for opportunities that his current position would never provide. Anna realized that Meridian Financial had been benefiting from Timothy's leadership abilities for years without acknowledging or compensating him appropriately. Her phone buzzed with a text message that made her smile. A photo from Timothy showing Emma's latest paper star creation, this one folded from purple construction paper, with "Thank you for helping Daddy help someone," written in careful second-grade handwriting across one of the points. The message accompanying the photo was simple. Emma wanted you to know that wishes really do work twice. Anna saved the photo to her phone, struck by the realization that an 8-year-old girl had somehow understood something about human connection that had eluded Harvard Business School and 15 years of corporate leadership training. The paper star tradition wasn't just about making wishes, it was about believing that small acts of kindness could create ripple effects that extended far beyond their immediate impact. Looking at Timothy's employment file with fresh perspective, Anna began to see not just untapped potential, but a roadmap for transforming how Meridian Financial recognized and developed talent throughout the organization. The night shift janitor who had saved her life was about to become the catalyst for changes that would affect every employee in the building. But first, she needed to understand exactly what kind of opportunity would honor Timothy's capabilities while serving the company's broader interests. The answer, she suspected, lay somewhere in the intersection of his natural leadership abilities and her growing conviction that corporate success required more authentic human connection at every level of the organization. 3 days after the night that had changed everything, Anna found herself pacing her office in the early morning hours, rehearsing a conversation that would either transform Timothy Drew's life or place her own judgment under intense scrutiny from the board of directors. The employment file that had revealed his hidden qualifications lay open on her desk beside a proposal she had spent the previous evening crafting, a document that would formalize the most unconventional promotion in Meridian Financial's corporate history. The position she envisioned didn't exist in any traditional organizational chart. Director of Employee Relations and Facility Integration, a role that would combine Timothy's intimate knowledge of building operations with his demonstrated ability to connect with people across all levels of the company hierarchy. It would mean leaving behind 12 years of night shift invisibility to become a bridge between executive leadership and the hundreds of support staff whose work made corporate success possible. Anna had spent considerable time consulting with Jennifer about the practical implications of such a dramatic promotion. The salary increase alone would be substantial, from Timothy's current hourly wage to a 6-figure executive position with full benefits and profit-sharing opportunities. More significantly, the role would require him to navigate boardroom presentations, manage department budgets, and represent Meridian Financial at industry conferences, where his lack of traditional corporate credentials might raise eyebrows among competitors and clients. But the more Anna considered the challenges, the more convinced she became that Timothy's unconventional background was precisely what made him invaluable. Corporate America is filled with executives who could recite business school theories about leadership and employee engagement, but precious few who had actually lived and worked alongside the people whose daily efforts sustain organizational success. Timothy's 12 years of night shift observations had provided him with insights that no MBA program could teach. The intercom buzzed, interrupting her preparation. "Miss Scott," Jennifer's voice carried its usual professional efficiency, "Mr. Drew is here for your 9 o'clock appointment. Should I show him to the conference room, or would you prefer to meet in your office?" Anna considered the options, recognizing that the setting would influence the tone of their conversation. The conference room suggested formal business proceedings, while her office maintained the intimacy of their breakthrough nighttime encounter. But for what she was about to propose, Timothy deserved the dignity of a proper executive meeting. "The conference room, please, Jennifer. And could you ask building services to ensure we won't be interrupted? This conversation may take some time." When Timothy entered the conference room, Anna was struck again by the transformation that proper lighting and conscious attention revealed in his appearance. Away from the shadows of night shift maintenance work, she could see the intelligence in his eyes, the quiet confidence in his posture, and the natural dignity that had impressed her so profoundly 3 nights earlier. He wore the same pressed uniform that had become his signature, but somehow it no longer seemed like a limitation. Instead, it represented the foundation of authenticity upon which greater opportunities could be built. "Good morning, Mr. Drew," Anna said, gesturing toward the chair across from her own rather than the head of the table where she typically conducted formal meetings. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me during your off hours. I hope the change in schedule didn't create any difficulties with your family responsibilities." "Emma's at school, so the timing works fine," Timothy replied, settling into the offered chair with the same calm presence he had displayed during their crisis conversation. "Though I'll admit I'm curious about what requires a formal meeting. I hope I haven't done anything wrong or violated any company policies by—" He paused, clearly uncertain how to reference their unconventional nighttime encounter. "Quite the opposite," Anna assured him quickly. "You saved my life, Timothy. Not just literally, though that's certainly true, but you reminded me that this company exists to serve people, not the other way around. What I want to discuss today is how we can ensure that your capabilities are being utilized in ways that benefit both you and Meridian Financial." Timothy's expression reflected cautious interest mixed with confusion. "Ma'am, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not sure what you mean. I'm a maintenance worker. A good one, I'd like to think, but I'm not qualified for the kind of positions that require formal meetings in conference rooms."
Anna opened the employment file she had brought with her, spreading several documents across the table between them. "This file tells a different story, Timothy. 12 years of perfect attendance, consistently exceptional performance reviews, multiple commendations from building tenants, and educational credentials that extend far beyond your current job requirements. You've been functioning as an unofficial leader and problem solver throughout this building, while simultaneously preparing yourself for opportunities that your position would never provide." She watched Timothy study the documents, his surprise evident as he recognized letters and evaluations he had never seen before. "I didn't know that tenants had written to management about my work," he said quietly. "I was just doing my job the way my father taught me, paying attention to details and treating people with respect." "That's exactly my point," Anna replied. "You've been doing far more than your job description requires, and you've been doing it with a level of insight and compassion that this company desperately needs at higher levels of leadership. What I'm proposing is a position that would formalize those abilities and give them the scope they deserve." Anna outlined her vision for the Director of Employee Relations and Facility Integration role, explaining how it would encompass everything from workplace safety and maintenance coordination to employee development programs and cross-departmental communication initiatives. Timothy would essentially become the voice of Meridian Financial's support staff while simultaneously ensuring that executive decisions considered their practical implications for daily operations. "The salary would be commensurate with other director-level positions," Anna continued, "approximately $120,000 annually plus performance bonuses and full executive benefits. You would report directly to me, with a budget for implementing employee wellness programs and facility improvements that you identify as priorities." Timothy sat in stunned silence for several moments, processing the magnitude of what was being offered. Anna could see him struggling to reconcile this extraordinary opportunity with his self-perception as someone whose greatest value lay in invisible service and quiet competence. "Miss Scott, I'm honored that you would consider me for such a position," he said finally. "But I have to ask, are you certain this is sound business judgment? I don't have an MBA or corporate management experience. The board of directors might question whether you're making this offer out of gratitude rather than genuine assessment of my qualifications." Anna had anticipated this concern and spent considerable time preparing her response. "Timothy, over the past 3 days, I've been reviewing not just your file, but my own assumptions about what qualifies someone for executive leadership. Yes, you lack traditional corporate credentials, but you possess something far more valuable:
authentic understanding of how this organization actually functions at every level. You know which departments struggle with communication, which procedures create unnecessary inefficiencies, and which employees have untapped potential because you've been observing and supporting them for over a decade. She leaned forward, her voice carrying the conviction that had built her reputation as a visionary leader. Corporate America is filled with executives who can analyze quarterly reports but couldn't identify the factors that actually drive employee satisfaction and productivity. We need leaders who understand that sustainable success requires investing in people, not just processes. Your background gives you credibility with support staff that no traditionally trained executive could match, while your self-directed education demonstrates the initiative and learning capacity essential for executive growth. Timothy considered her words carefully, and Anna could see him weighing the personal risks against the potential impact of accepting such a dramatic change in his life trajectory. "What about Emma?" he asked. "This would mean different hours, travel requirements, responsibilities that might affect my ability to be the kind of father she needs." "The role would include flexibility for family obligations. One of the first policies I want you to develop is comprehensive work-life balance guidelines for all employees, starting with your own situation. Emma should see that pursuing opportunity doesn't require sacrificing the relationships that matter most." As their conversation continued, Anna watched Timothy's initial shock transform into genuine excitement about the possibilities the position would create. His questions became more detailed and strategic, revealing the depth of his thinking about organizational improvement and employee development. By the time their meeting concluded, she was more convinced than ever that her instincts about his potential were absolutely correct. "I need some time to consider this carefully," Timothy said, "to discuss it with Emma and make sure I understand all the implications. But, Miss Scott, Anna, I want you to know that regardless of my decision, what you've offered me today is far more than a job opportunity. You've given me a chance to see myself differently, to believe that the work I've been doing quietly all these years might have prepared me for something bigger." Anna smiled, remembering Emma's paper star and the child's wisdom about wishes working twice. "Take all the time you need, Timothy, but remember that sometimes the most important opportunities require us to step into the unknown with nothing but faith in our own capabilities and the support of people who believe in our potential." As Timothy left the conference room, Anna realized that her decision to offer him this position had already begun transforming her own understanding of leadership and the responsibility that came with the power to change lives. Whether he accepted or not, the conversation had confirmed her growing conviction that Meridian Financial's future success would depend on its willingness to recognize excellence wherever it existed, regardless of traditional hierarchies or conventional expectations.
Timothy Drew had never imagined that accepting a job offer would require the same careful consideration he had given to becoming a single father. But as he sat at his small kitchen table that evening, Emma's homework spread beside his own notes about the director position, he realized that this decision would reshape not just his career, but the entire trajectory of their shared life. The weight of Anna's proposal seemed to fill their modest apartment, transforming familiar surroundings into a launching pad for possibilities he had never dared to contemplate. Emma worked diligently on her math worksheet, occasionally glancing up at her father with the intuitive awareness that children possess when something significant occupies the adults in their world. She had listened with rapt attention as Timothy explained, in age-appropriate terms, that his boss had offered him a chance to help more people at work, but that it would mean changes in their daily routine and new responsibilities that might sometimes keep him busy during their precious evening hours together. "Daddy," Emma said, setting down her pencil and fixing him with the serious expression she wore when processing important information, "would you still be able to help me with my paper stars if you take the new job?" The question cut straight to the heart of Timothy's concerns. Their evening ritual of folding paper stars while sharing the day's experiences had become the cornerstone of their relationship, a sacred time when the outside world's demands couldn't intrude on their connection.
The thought of sacrificing that intimacy for professional advancement felt like betraying everything his father had taught him about priorities and what truly mattered in life. "That's something we'd have to figure out together, sweetheart," Timothy replied honestly. "The new job would mean different hours sometimes, and I might have to travel to other buildings to help people there too. But you know what? I think we could make our star time even more special because I'd have new stories to tell you about the people I'm helping." Emma nodded thoughtfully, her 8-year-old mind working through the implications with remarkable maturity. "Mrs. Rodriguez says that when grown-ups get new opportunities, it's because they've been preparing for them without knowing it. She says it's like how butterflies don't know they're going to fly when they're still caterpillars, but they have to trust the change anyway." Timothy smiled at his daughter's wisdom, recognizing Rebecca's influence in Emma's ability to find profound meaning in simple observations. His late wife had possessed the same gift for seeing life's larger patterns, for understanding that growth often required embracing uncertainty despite the fear it generated. The next morning brought the challenge of explaining his decision to his colleagues in the maintenance department, people who had become his second family during 12 years of shared night shifts and mutual support. Carlos Martinez, the day supervisor who had become Timothy's closest friend among the staff, listened with a mixture of pride and concern as Timothy described Anna's unprecedented offer. "Brother, this is incredible news," Carlos said, clapping Timothy on the shoulder with genuine enthusiasm. "You've been ready for something like this for years, even if you didn't see it yourself. But man, you're going to be missed down here. Who's going to teach the new guys how to really take care of this place? Who's going to notice the problems before they become disasters?" The question highlighted Timothy's own concerns about leaving behind work that had given his life structure and meaning for over a decade. He had developed genuine affection for Meridian Financial Tower, understanding its quirks and needs with the intimacy of someone who had spent thousands of hours ensuring its optimal function. The thought of entrusting that responsibility to someone else felt like abandoning a living entity that depended on his care. Maria Santos, who cleaned the lower floors and had often sought Timothy's advice about dealing with difficult situations, expressed similar concerns mixed with excitement about his advancement. "You've been like a mentor to all of us," she said during their brief overlap at shift change. "Promise me you won't forget where you came from when you're sitting in those fancy meetings upstairs." Timothy assured his colleagues that his new role would actually strengthen his connection to the maintenance staff, explaining Anna's vision of creating better communication between executive leadership and support personnel. But privately, he wondered whether he could maintain authentic relationships with his former peers while navigating the complex social dynamics of corporate leadership. The most challenging conversation came with Elena Rodriguez, Emma's teacher and the source of much of the child's wisdom about kindness and opportunity. As Timothy picked up Emma from after-school care, Elena asked to speak with him privately about the changes that might affect his daughter's stability. "Timothy, I'm thrilled about your promotion. You deserve recognition for everything you've contributed over the years," Elena said, her voice carrying the gentle concern of someone who had watched Emma navigate the challenges of single-parent family dynamics. "But I want to make sure we're considering how these changes might affect Emma. She's been so stable and happy lately, and major transitions can be difficult for children who've already experienced significant loss." Timothy appreciated Elena's perspective, recognizing that his excitement about professional advancement needed to be balanced against Emma's emotional needs. They discussed strategies for maintaining consistency in Emma's routine while gradually introducing the changes that his new position would require. Elena suggested involving Emma in age-appropriate aspects of his career transition, helping her understand that growth could strengthen rather than threaten their family bond. That evening, Timothy called his sister Carmen, who lived across the country but maintained close contact through their weekly phone conversations. Carmen had been his primary emotional support during Rebecca's death and Emma's adjustment period, and her perspective on major life decisions had proven invaluable during previous challenges. "Timmy, this is amazing," Carmen said, her excitement evident even across the long-distance connection. "You've been building towards something like this your whole adult life, even when you didn't realize it. Dad would be so proud to see his lessons about dignity and hard work opening doors you never expected. But Carmen also raised practical concerns that Timothy hadn't fully considered. What about the politics of corporate leadership? You're going to be dealing with people who might resent your unconventional background or question your qualifications. Are you prepared for that kind of scrutiny? And what happens if Anna Scott leaves the company, or if her support for you diminishes over time? These questions forced Timothy to confront the vulnerability in accepting a position that depended so heavily on one person's faith in his potential. Anna's tragic crisis had created the circumstances for their connection, but corporate environments were notoriously fickle about maintaining support for innovative approaches when business pressures mounted. Timothy spent his final night shift walking through Meridian Financial Tower with heightened awareness of everything he would be leaving behind. The familiar weight of his cleaning cart, the satisfying rhythm of restoring order to chaotic office spaces, the quiet pride of maintaining standards that others might never notice. These elements of his work life had provided stability and purpose during his most difficult years. But as he completed his rounds, Timothy also noticed details that reinforced Anna's vision of his broader potential. The outdated training materials in the break rooms that could be improved with better budget allocation. The communication gaps between departments that created inefficiencies and frustration. The talented maintenance workers whose capabilities were underutilized because no formal career development programs existed for support staff. By dawn, Timothy had reached his decision. The opportunity Anna offered wasn't just a chance for personal advancement. It was a platform for advocating for hundreds of employees whose contributions deserved greater recognition and support. His father's lessons about dignity in work had prepared him not just to accept opportunity when it arrived, but to use that opportunity to lift others along with himself. When Emma woke up, Timothy was sitting at their kitchen table with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a fresh piece of yellow construction paper. "Want to help me make a special star?" he asked. "I have a big decision to tell Miss Scott about, and I think this one needs extra wishes." Emma's face lit up with understanding and excitement. As they folded the paper together, Timothy realized that his daughter was teaching him the most important lesson of all, that growth and change could strengthen rather than threaten the relationships that mattered most, as long as love remained the foundation for every decision. The yellow star they created that morning would carry more than wishes when Timothy delivered his answer to Anna Scott. It would carry the hopes of a father determined to show his daughter that opportunity and integrity could coexist, and the dreams of a man ready to transform his life's work from invisible service into visible leadership. 2 weeks into his new role as Director of Employee Relations and Facility Integration, Timothy found himself facing his first major test when the quarterly board meeting agenda included a presentation he had never anticipated delivering. The crisis emerged on a Tuesday morning when Anna called him to her office with an urgency that reminded him of their fateful first encounter, though this time her distress stemmed from corporate politics rather than personal despair. "Timothy, we have a situation," Anna said, closing her office door behind him and gesturing toward the conference table where several documents lay scattered. "The board received an anonymous complaint yesterday, alleging that your promotion was based on favoritism rather than merit. They're demanding a comprehensive review of your qualifications and a detailed justification for creating your position." Timothy felt his stomach drop as he absorbed the implications. In the 2 weeks since accepting Anna's offer, he had thrown himself into the role with characteristic dedication, conducting facility assessments, meeting with department heads, and beginning to develop the employee development programs that Anna had envisioned. But he had also been acutely aware that his unconventional path to executive leadership would invite scrutiny from those who questioned whether a former maintenance worker belonged in the corporate hierarchy. "Do we know who filed the complaint?" Timothy asked, though he suspected the answer would reveal the political undercurrents that he was still learning to navigate. The document was submitted anonymously, but the language and specific concerns suggest it came from someone with intimate knowledge of corporate governance protocols, Anna replied grimly. "Someone who wants to undermine both your credibility and my judgment in promoting you. The board has scheduled a special session for Friday where you'll need to present evidence that your position adds genuine value to the company's operations." Timothy studied the complaint, recognizing that whoever had crafted it possessed sophisticated understanding of corporate vulnerability points. The document questioned not just his qualifications, but the entire concept of promoting support staff to executive positions, arguing that such decisions created dangerous precedents that could destabilize traditional management hierarchies.
"Anna, maybe they have a point," Timothy said quietly, the weight of imposter syndrome settling over him like a familiar burden. "I've been in this role for 2 weeks. What evidence can I possibly present that justifies such a dramatic promotion? Maybe I moved too fast, accepted something I wasn't ready for." "Stop," Anna interrupted firmly, her voice carrying the executive authority that had built her reputation. "This isn't about your qualifications. It's about resistance to change from people who benefit from maintaining the status quo. But you're right about one thing. We need concrete evidence of your value, which means you have 4 days to demonstrate why Meridian Financial needs Timothy Drew in ways that go far beyond traditional job descriptions." The challenge energized something deep within Timothy's character, the same determination that had sustained him through night school classes and single parenthood. He had spent 12 years observing corporate operations from a unique perspective, identifying inefficiencies and opportunities that traditional management often missed. Now, he had 4 days to transform those observations into a presentation that would either validate Anna's faith in him or end his executive career before it truly began. Timothy began by conducting a comprehensive audit of every facility issue he had identified during his maintenance years, cross-referencing them with actual costs and resolutions implemented by building management. The data revealed a pattern that even he hadn't fully appreciated. His informal recommendations had saved Meridian Financial over $200,000 in preventive maintenance costs during the previous 5 years alone. But the real breakthrough came when Timothy expanded his analysis beyond facilities management to examine employee satisfaction and productivity metrics. Using his access to personnel files and performance data, he discovered correlations that highlighted the hidden costs of poor employee relations. Departments with higher maintenance staff turnover consistently showed increased facility problems, workplace accidents, and even executive productivity issues related to environmental concerns. The maintenance logs Timothy had meticulously kept over the years suddenly became a treasure trove of evidence about the interconnected nature of building operations and business success. His notes revealed patterns of equipment failure that corresponded with periods of staff stress, correlations between workplace cleanliness and employee morale, and even connections between facility aesthetics and client satisfaction during important meetings. Working 18-hour days, Timothy assembled a presentation that transformed 12 years of invisible service into a compelling business case for integrated employee relations management. He identified 17 specific areas where improved communication between support staff and executive leadership could enhance both operational efficiency and workplace culture. The most powerful element of his presentation emerged from interviews he conducted with employees across all levels of the organization. Security guards revealed safety concerns that had never reached management attention. Cafeteria workers described food service inefficiencies that affected employee satisfaction. Administrative assistants shared insights about interdepartmental communication barriers that created costly delays in project completion. Timothy's unique position, respected by support staff for his background, while now possessing executive authority to implement changes, allowed him to gather information that traditional consultants could never access. Employees trusted him with honest feedback because they knew he understood their perspectives and wouldn't use their input against them. The presentation took shape as a comprehensive vision for organizational transformation based on recognizing that every employee, regardless of position, possessed insights that could benefit the company's overall success.
Timothy proposed creating formal channels for bottom-up feedback, implementing cross-training programs that would help executives understand operational realities, and establishing recognition systems that celebrated excellence at every level. But the most innovative aspect of his proposal involved restructuring the physical workspace to encourage interaction between different levels of the corporate hierarchy. Drawing on his intimate knowledge of building flow patterns and employee behaviors, Timothy designed modifications that would naturally increase positive contact between executives and support staff, breaking down the invisible barriers that prevented effective communication. On Thursday evening, as Timothy prepared for the board presentation that would determine his future at Meridian Financial, Emma helped him practice by listening to a simplified version of his proposals. Her 8-year-old perspective provided unexpected clarity about the fundamental principle underlying his entire approach. "Daddy, you're trying to help the important people remember that everyone is important," she said. "Just like how you always tell me that being popular at school doesn't make someone better than kids who aren't popular, they just have different ways of being special." Emma's insight crystallized the message Timothy needed to convey to the board. His value lay not in traditional qualifications, but in his ability to bridge worlds that corporate structure often kept artificially separate. His promotion wasn't about lowering standards for executive leadership. It was about expanding the definition of leadership to include capabilities that business schools couldn't teach. Friday morning arrived with the weight of Judgment Day, but Timothy felt surprisingly calm as he prepared for the board presentation. Whether he succeeded or failed, he had discovered something valuable about his own potential and the hidden strengths that years of service had developed. Anna's faith in him had sparked a transformation that extended far beyond job titles or salary levels. It had shown him that expertise could emerge from unexpected sources when combined with dedication and genuine care for others. As Timothy gathered his presentation materials and Emma's latest paper star, he realized that the anonymous complaint had actually provided him with something precious: the opportunity to prove not just his own worth, but the principle that excellence could be found anywhere in an organization when leaders were brave enough to look beyond conventional expectations.
The boardroom awaited, along with the moment when 12 years of invisible service would either be validated as executive leadership material or dismissed as an expensive mistake in judgment. But Timothy Drew was ready to make his case, armed with data, insights, and the quiet confidence of someone who had finally found his voice. The boardroom at Meridian Financial had witnessed countless presentations that shaped the company's strategic direction, but the tension that filled the mahogany-paneled space on Friday morning carried an unusual charge of personal stakes mixed with corporate politics. Timothy stood at the head of the polished conference table, his laptop connected to the presentation screen, facing 11 board members whose expressions ranged from skeptical curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Board Chairman Richard Blackstone, a silver-haired veteran of 3 decades in corporate finance, opened the session with the kind of measured formality that barely concealed his personal reservations about the proceedings. "Mr. Drew, this review was requested due to concerns about the precedent set by your promotion and the potential impact on our organizational structure. You have 30 minutes to demonstrate that your position adds measurable value to Meridian Financial's operations." Anna sat at the far end of the table, her poker face revealing nothing of the anxiety Timothy knew she must be feeling. Her professional reputation was intertwined with his success or failure, and several board members had already expressed private concerns about her judgment in creating such an unconventional executive position. Timothy understood that he wasn't just defending his own career, he was validating Anna's vision of leadership that recognized talent regardless of its origin. "Thank you, Mr. Blackstone," Timothy replied, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I want to begin by acknowledging that my path to this position is unprecedented in Meridian Financial's history. But I believe that unprecedented challenges require unprecedented approaches, and today I'll demonstrate why my background provides unique value that traditional qualifications cannot match." Timothy's opening slide displayed a stark financial comparison that immediately captured the board's attention. Preventative maintenance savings initiated by informal employee recommendations, $247,000 over 5 years.
Cost of emergency repairs for issues that could have been prevented with better communication, $892,000 over the same period. The numbers spoke to the bottom-line impact that board members understood instinctively. These figures represent problems that were solved or could have been prevented by listening to observations from support staff who interact with building systems daily. My first recommendation as Director of Employee Relations is establishing formal channels for this kind of operational intelligence, potentially saving the company hundreds of thousands annually while improving workplace conditions. Board member Patricia Williams, the Chief Financial Officer who had initially supported Timothy's promotion, leaned forward with interest. "Mr. Drew, can you provide specific examples of how this communication gap has affected our operations?" Timothy was prepared for this question, having anticipated that the board would demand concrete evidence rather than theoretical benefits. 3 months ago, night security reported unusual sounds from the HVA system on the 32nd floor. Because no formal reporting mechanism existed for non-emergency maintenance concerns, the issue wasn't addressed until the system failed completely during the Henderson Industries acquisition meeting, requiring emergency repairs costing $43,000 and nearly derailing a $15 million deal. The board members exchanged glances that Timothy recognized as the shift from skepticism towards genuine interest. He continued building his case by presenting data about employee satisfaction correlations with productivity metrics, revealing patterns that traditional management assessments had missed entirely. Employee turnover in departments with higher support staff satisfaction rates is 37% lower than company average, Timothy explained, clicking to a graph that illustrated the relationship clearly. Exit interviews reveal that workplace environment quality, cleanliness, maintenance responsiveness, and feeling heard by management ranks as the third most important factor in employee retention, yet we have no systematic approach to monitoring or improving these elements. Board member Patricia Williams, the Chief Financial Officer who had initially supported Timothy's promotion, leaned forward with interest. "Mr. Drew, can you provide specific examples of how this communication gap has affected our operations?" Timothy was prepared for this question, having anticipated that the board would demand concrete evidence rather than theoretical benefits. 3 months ago, night security reported unusual sounds from the HVA system on the 32nd floor. Because no formal reporting mechanism existed for non-emergency maintenance concerns, the issue wasn't addressed until the system failed completely during the Henderson Industries acquisition meeting, requiring emergency repairs costing $43,000 and nearly derailing a $15 million deal. The board members exchanged glances that Timothy recognized as the shift from skepticism towards genuine interest. He continued building his case by presenting data about employee satisfaction correlations with productivity metrics, revealing patterns that traditional management assessments had missed entirely. Employee turnover in departments with higher support staff satisfaction rates is 37% lower than company average, Timothy explained, clicking to a graph that illustrated the relationship clearly. Board member James Morrison, representing the company's largest institutional investors, raised the concern that Timothy had been dreading. "Mr. Drew, while these observations are interesting, what qualifies you specifically to implement solutions? Your background is in maintenance, not organizational development or strategic planning." Timothy felt the weight of the moment, recognizing that his response would determine whether the board viewed his unconventional background as a liability or an asset. He advanced to his most compelling slide, showing a detailed organizational chart that mapped informal communication networks throughout Meridian Financial. "This diagram represents the actual flow of information in our building, based on my observations of who talks to whom, which departments collaborate effectively, and where communication breakdowns consistently occur. Traditional org charts show formal reporting relationships, but this map reveals how work actually gets done." The chart illustrated patterns that surprised even Anna, revealing unofficial leadership roles filled by administrative assistants, cross-departmental problem-solving networks that bypassed formal channels, and information bottlenecks that created costly delays in project implementation. Timothy had essentially reverse-engineered the company's social dynamics through years of careful observation. This intelligence allows us to redesign workflows, improve communication protocols, and identify natural leaders throughout the organization who could benefit from formal development opportunities.
Board member Susan Chen, who oversaw human resources strategy, expressed the question that Timothy knew would be crucial to his success. Assuming your analysis is accurate, how do you propose to implement these improvements without disrupting existing management structures or creating employee relations problems? Timothy's response revealed the depth of planning he had invested in his new role. I propose a pilot program starting with 3 departments, implementing gradual changes based on employee feedback and measurable outcomes. Rather than disrupting existing hierarchies, we'll create parallel communication channels that enhance rather than replace current management practices. He outlined a comprehensive strategy that included monthly cross-departmental meetings facilitated by support staff representatives, anonymous feedback systems that allowed employees to suggest operational improvements, and recognition programs that celebrated excellence at every organizational level. The approach was designed to increase efficiency while building stronger relationships between management and support personnel. The most powerful moment of Timothy's presentation came when he shared testimonials from employees who had already begun participating in his informal initiatives. Maria Santos spoke on video about how Timothy's encouragement had led her to suggest schedule modifications that improved cleaning efficiency while reducing overtime costs. Carlos Martinez described how Timothy's mentoring had helped him identify equipment upgrade needs that prevented costly emergency repairs. These aren't isolated examples, Timothy emphasized. They represent untapped potential throughout our organization, people who possess insights and capabilities that could benefit Meridian Financial if we create systems to recognize and utilize their contributions. As Timothy concluded his presentation, he noticed that the board's initial skepticism had transformed into something approaching respect. Even Richard Blackstone, who had opened the session with obvious reservations, was taking detailed notes and asking follow-up questions that suggested genuine interest in implementation strategies. "Mr. Drew," Blackstone said finally, "your presentation raises important questions about how we've traditionally approached employee relations and organizational efficiency. However, implementing these changes would require significant cultural shifts and ongoing investment. How do you propose to measure success and ensure accountability?" Timothy's final slide displayed a comprehensive metrics framework that would track everything from employee satisfaction scores to operational efficiency improvements, with quarterly assessments and adjustment protocols built into the program design. The proposal demonstrated not just innovative thinking, but practical understanding of corporate accountability requirements. As the board moved into closed session to discuss his presentation, Timothy felt a profound sense of completion regardless of their decision. He had successfully translated 12 years of invisible observation into a compelling vision for organizational improvement, proving that expertise could emerge from unexpected sources when given proper opportunity and support. Anna caught his eye as he gathered his materials, her slight nod conveying both pride and confidence in the case he had made. Whatever the board decided, Timothy had demonstrated that his promotion represented not favoritism, but recognition of capabilities that traditional hiring practices would have overlooked entirely. The anonymous complaint that had triggered this review had inadvertently provided Timothy with the platform to prove that sometimes the most valuable perspectives come from those who have seen the organization from angles that executive leadership never considers. The 48 hours following Timothy's board presentation passed with agonizing slowness. Each mundane task waited with the knowledge that his professional future hung in deliberation behind closed doors he could no longer access. Anna had warned him that board decisions often required extensive discussion, particularly when they involved precedent-setting policies that could affect the company's long-term direction. But the waiting felt interminable to someone accustomed to immediate feedback from tangible work. Timothy thrilled himself into the employee interviews and facility assessments that comprised his daily responsibilities, finding comfort in the methodical approach that had sustained him through previous periods of uncertainty. But on Sunday evening, as he helped Emma with her homework while monitoring his phone for any communication from Anna, an emergency call shattered the artificial calm he had been maintaining.
"Timothy, we need you at the building immediately." Anna's voice carried an urgency that transported him back to their first crisis encounter. "There's been an accident in the parking garage, and we have a situation that requires your expertise with both building systems and employee relations." Within 20 minutes, Timothy had arranged for Emma to stay with their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and was racing through the empty streets toward Meridian Financial Tower. The scene that greeted him in the underground parking garage was controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles with flashing lights, building security coordinating with paramedics, and a small crowd of evening shift employees whose weekend work had been disrupted by what appeared to be a significant infrastructure failure. A section of the parking garage ceiling had partially collapsed, trapping 2 cars and narrowly missing several employees who had been leaving the building after completing overtime assignments. While the immediate physical danger had passed, the structural integrity of the entire garage was now in question, and the building's emergency protocols were being tested in ways that revealed critical gaps in preparedness and communication. Anna met Timothy at the elevator, her executive composure strained by the complexity of managing both immediate safety concerns and the broader implications for Monday morning when hundreds of employees would need parking access. "The city inspector won't clear the garage for use until we can demonstrate that the remaining structure is stable," she explained as they descended. "Building management is scrambling to find alternative solutions, but more importantly, the employees who witnessed the collapse are shaken and asking questions about overall building safety that I'm not qualified to answer."
Timothy surveyed the scene with the systematic approach that had made him invaluable during his maintenance years, but now his assessment carried the authority of executive decision-making. The collapsed section appeared to be the result of water damage that had weakened supporting beams over time, exactly the kind of gradual deterioration that his informal reporting system was designed to detect and prevent. "How long has there been water staining on the ceiling in this area?" Timothy asked Carlos Martinez, who had been called in to assist with the emergency response despite it being his day off. "Man, I've been mentioning those watermarks for 6 months," Carlos replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Put it in 3 different maintenance reports, but nothing ever got prioritized because it didn't seem urgent. Just discoloration, you know? Nobody thought it was structural." Timothy felt his stomach tighten as he realized that this accident represented exactly the kind of preventable crisis his presentation had warned about. The water stains Carlos had reported were classic indicators of the slow leak that had ultimately compromised the ceiling's integrity. But without formal protocols for escalating non-emergency concerns, the information had never reached decision-makers who could authorize investigative repairs. The employees gathered near the emergency vehicles included several people Timothy recognized from his maintenance rounds: security guards, cleaning staff, and weekend administrative workers whose observations about building conditions were rarely solicited by management. Their obvious anxiety extended beyond immediate safety concerns to deeper questions about whether their workplace could be trusted to protect them from hazards they weren't qualified to identify themselves. "Folks, I know this looks scary, and you have every right to be concerned about building safety," Timothy addressed the group with the calm authority he had developed during years of managing Emma's fears about everything, from thunderstorms to first day of school jitters. "But I want you to know that we're going to use this incident to make sure nothing like this happens again." Timothy's impromptu crisis leadership emerged naturally from his unique position between management authority and support staff credibility. The employees trusted him because of his background, while his executive status gave him the power to make commitments that would actually be implemented. He found himself coordinating not just immediate response logistics, but long-term policy changes that would emerge from this emergency. Working through the night, Timothy established temporary parking arrangements for Monday morning while simultaneously developing an emergency inspection protocol that would identify and address similar structural vulnerabilities throughout the building. His intimate knowledge of building systems, combined with his new authority to allocate resources, allowed him to orchestrate solutions that addressed both immediate needs and systemic prevention.
The real test of his leadership came when the building's insurance adjuster arrived Monday morning, requiring detailed documentation of the incident and comprehensive assessment of the company's maintenance protocols. Timothy found himself serving as the primary liaison between corporate leadership, facilities management, and the various contractors and inspectors whose work would determine Meridian Financial's liability and future safety procedures. "Mr. Drew, I have to say this is unusual," the insurance adjuster commented as Timothy provided meticulously detailed maintenance logs and employee reports that most companies couldn't produce. Most organizations struggle to document the history of infrastructure issues with this level of precision. Your records suggest a level of attention to building conditions that goes far beyond standard practice. Timothy realized that his years of careful observation and documentation, initially motivated simply by professional pride, had created an invaluable paper trail that would protect Meridian Financial from both legal liability and insurance complications. The maintenance notebooks he had kept as an invisible janitor were now serving as crucial evidence that the company took building safety seriously, even when individual incidents slipped through administrative cracks. But the incident's most significant impact came during the emergency board meeting called to address the parking garage collapse and its implications for company operations. Timothy found himself presenting not just incident analysis, but a comprehensive safety overhaul that transformed the crisis into an opportunity for systematic improvement. The good news is that our insurance costs will actually decrease once we implement the enhanced reporting protocols Mr. Drew has developed, Anna announced to board members who had been preparing for financial disaster. The adjuster was so impressed with our documentation and response procedures that he's recommending us for their proactive safety recognition program. Board Chairman Richard Blackstone, who had been skeptical about Timothy's qualifications just days earlier, addressed him directly with newfound respect. "Mr. Drew, it's clear that your unique background allowed you to manage this crisis in ways that traditional corporate training couldn't have prepared us for. The board has completed our review of your position, and I'm pleased to inform you that we're not only confirming your appointment, but expanding your authority to include company-wide safety and emergency response coordination." Timothy felt a surge of vindication that went far beyond personal satisfaction. The parking garage incident had provided concrete proof that his unconventional expertise filled genuine gaps in corporate capabilities, validating honest faith in promoting talent regardless of its traditional packaging. As he coordinated with city inspectors and insurance representatives throughout the week, Timothy realized that his response to this crisis had established himself as an indispensable resource for challenges that required both technical knowledge and human relation skills. The anonymous complaint that had threatened his position now seemed like distant history, overshadowed by demonstrated competence under pressure. But more importantly, the incident had proven the value of his employee relations philosophy in ways that no presentation could have achieved. The maintenance workers, whose informal reports had been ignored for months, were now being consulted as essential partners in building safety assessment, their observations treated with the respect that Timothy had always believed they deserved. The paper star Emma had folded for him that morning sat on his desk as he completed the incident reports. Its bright yellow color a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes emerge from moments of crisis that test everything we think we know about ourselves and our capabilities. 6 months after the parking garage incident that had cemented Timothy's reputation as an indispensable executive leader, Meridian Financial Tower had become a case study in organizational transformation that extended far beyond the walls of a single building. The morning sun streaming through the conference room windows illuminated a scene that would have seemed impossible during Timothy's invisible years as a night shift janitor. A diverse group of employees from every level of the company hierarchy collaborating as equals in the monthly Employee Innovation Forum he had established. Maria Santos, who had transitioned from cleaning staff to employee wellness coordinator, was presenting data about workplace satisfaction improvements that had resulted from Timothy's integrated communication programs. Carlos Martinez, now serving as building systems specialist while completing his engineering degree through the company's new tuition assistance program, outlined infrastructure enhancement projects that had saved Meridian Financial over $500,000 in potential emergency repairs. But the most remarkable transformation sat across from Timothy at the conference table, Anna Scott, whose personal renaissance had paralleled the company's cultural evolution. The CEO, who had once contemplated ending her life in isolation, now radiated the authentic confidence of someone who had rediscovered purpose through genuine human connection. Her relationship with her daughter Charlotte had slowly rebuilt as Anna learned to prioritize presence over productivity, and their upcoming Christmas vacation represented the first extended family time they had shared since the divorce. The numbers speak for themselves, Anna addressed the assembled group with the warm authority that had replaced her former cold efficiency. Employee retention is up 42%, client satisfaction has reached record highs, and our operational costs have decreased while productivity has increased across all departments. But more importantly, we've created a workplace where every person's contributions are valued and recognized. Timothy surveyed the conference room with quiet satisfaction, remembering the sterile corporate environment that had once intimidated him during his first board presentation. The space now buzzed with the energy of authentic collaboration, walls displaying employee innovation suggestions alongside traditional performance metrics, and conversations flowing naturally between executives and support staff who had learned to see each other as partners rather than hierarchical positions. The ripple effects of Timothy's promotion had extended far beyond Meridian Financial's organizational chart. Other companies had begun implementing similar employee relations programs, and Timothy found himself fielding speaking requests from business schools and corporate conferences, where his unconventional path from maintenance worker to executive director was inspiring new approaches to talent development and leadership recognition. Emma, now 9 years old and more confident than ever, had become something of a celebrity at Riverside Elementary School, where her father's story had sparked conversations about the dignity of all honest work and the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected places. Her paper star tradition had evolved into a school-wide kindness initiative, with children creating weekly wishes for classmates, teachers, and community members who needed encouragement. "Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez says you're going to be in a magazine," announced during their evening star folding ritual, her voice carrying the pride that had sustained Timothy through every challenge of the past year. Timothy smiled as he helped Emma crease the edges of her latest creation, a silver star that shimmered in the lamplight. Despite his increased salary and the respect that came with executive leadership, he had chosen to remain in Riverside Gardens, understanding that his connection to the community had shaped his values in ways that no amount of professional success could replace. The magazine article Emma referenced was part of a Harvard Business Review feature about innovative leadership development. But Timothy's proudest recognition had come from an unexpected source: a letter from Dr. Patricia Williams, the pediatric oncologist whose crisis he had helped navigate during his maintenance years. She had written to thank him for inspiring her hospital to implement similar employee support programs, crediting his example with saving her marriage and helping her find balance between professional demands and personal relationships. "Your willingness to listen without judgment taught me that healing happens in moments of genuine human connection. The program we've developed based on your model has transformed our workplace culture and improved patient outcomes in ways we never anticipated." Timothy had framed the letter alongside Emma's artwork and his father's old photograph, creating a visual reminder that impact often extends far beyond immediate visibility. The lessons his father had taught about dignity in work had evolved into a philosophy of leadership that honored contribution regardless of job title or social status. The transformation of Meridian Financial had attracted attention from corporate researchers studying the relationship between employee satisfaction and business performance. Timothy's integrated approach to facilities management and human relations had produced measurable improvements that challenged traditional assumptions about organizational efficiency and workplace culture. But perhaps the most meaningful validation came during the company's annual holiday party, when Timothy watched Anna deliver a speech that reflected her personal journey from isolated executive to authentic leader.
She spoke about the night when a maintenance worker's compassion had saved her life, though she carefully protected Timothy's privacy by focusing on the lessons rather than the personal details of their encounter. Sometimes, the most important leadership happens in moments when someone chooses to see another person's humanity despite professional boundaries or social expectations, Anna told the assembled employees. The greatest gift we can give each other is the recognition that every role in this organization matters, and every person deserves to be truly seen and valued for their contributions. As the evening concluded, Timothy found himself standing in the same lobby where he had once pushed a cleaning cart in invisible anonymity. Now he wore a tailored suit and carried business cards identifying him as Director of Employee Relations and Facility Integration. But the satisfaction he felt came not from status symbols, but from the knowledge that his work was creating opportunities for others to discover their own hidden potential. Emma's latest paper star, tucked carefully in his jacket pocket, bore a message written in her improving penmanship. "Thank you for showing everyone that wishes really do come true when people are brave enough to help each other." The wisdom of his 8-year-old daughter had captured the essence of what they had accomplished together, a transformation that began with one person's willingness to step outside prescribed roles and offer genuine human compassion. Walking through the building's corridors one final time before heading home, Timothy nodded to the night shift security guards and maintenance workers who were beginning their rounds. Some were studying for college courses through the company's Education Assistance Program, others were developing innovative suggestions for the next Employee Innovation Forum, and all were working with the dignity and pride that came from knowing their contributions were valued and recognized. The paper star tradition that had begun as a child's way of processing grief had evolved into something far greater, a symbol of hope that could transform individual lives and entire organizations when combined with the courage to see potential in unexpected places. Timothy's journey from invisible janitor to executive leader had proven that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness offered at exactly the moment when someone needs them most. As he turned off the lights in his office, Timothy smiled at the thought that somewhere in the building, another night shift worker might be quietly observing, learning, and preparing for opportunities they couldn't yet imagine. The cycle of recognition and advancement he had helped create would continue long after his own story had become simply one example of what was possible when organizations chose to truly see and value every person who contributed to their success. The bright yellow paper star from Emma that had started everything still sat framed on his desk, a reminder that sometimes the most important wishes are the ones we make for other people, and that hope, once shared, multiplies in ways that can transform the world one person, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.